Hi, I'm Ted, part of the engineering team here at SVR Tracking, and I've been installing tracking and telematics devices on everything imaginable for 25 years. As a mobile electronics certified professional, or MECP first class installer, I know a few tips and tricks that make your installations go faster and become more professional. Okay, let's go into today's episode. Anytime you're installing a 12-volt accessory, whether it be a GPS tracking system, a stereo, or a camera system that requires 12 volts, you're going to need to use a voltmeter to determine where a circuit is that you can use for your 12-volt source and your ground source. Now, digital multimeters vary in their complexity and size. This is the one I use. This meter has many different settings, from AC voltage to DC voltage, resistance. It has continuity settings. All of these matter when I'm looking for a particular wire in a vehicle. So to create a full circuit, you have to have a negative and a positive. So in a 12-volt circuit, the battery supplies that voltage from the negative on the battery and the positive on the battery. In a vehicle, the negative battery post is connected to the chassis or metal portion of the vehicle. So you can find ground typically anywhere that there's a metal section of the vehicle that's attached to the chassis or to the chassis itself. When you're using a voltmeter, it's imperative that you get a good ground on the black wire, on your black lead, while testing. If you don't have a good ground on your black lead, you'll get resistance, and that resistance can give you false readings as far as the voltage and what its actual voltage is. In order to find a 12-volt source, I would simply turn my meter to voltage, select the DC setting, and my range to a 10 volt setting. At that point, I'm going to try to locate a nice, clear, clean, paint-free metal portion of the car that I can attach my black lead to. And then if I already have an idea of where my 12-volt sources are, I'm going to look for that by probing the wires with my red lead. And if this is connected to a solid black lead or a good solid ground, chassis ground, and I've got no resistance between the ground and the lead, then I've got 12 volts going to show up on the meter when I get to a constant 12-volt source. Now, the difference between a constant source and a switch source is the position of the key. If I'm looking for a 12-volt constant, I don't need the key in the cylinder. I can just probe with my black lead grounded to chassis and my red lead on the wire I'm testing. Any wire that shows me 12 to 14 volts on the meter when I'm probing without a key in the ignition is going to be a 12-volt source, and I can use that for my 12-volt power source. Where I grounded my meter lead is also where I can potentially ground my device. If it's a clean, paint-free metal area, I can simply use a self-tapping screw and ground it directly to that point in the vehicle. We always recommend you go directly to the chassis of the vehicle. Now, if you've got another asset like a wave runner or a ATV that you're wanting to put a system in, and the ground is not, it'll typically be connected to chassis, but like some of the wave runners are fiberglass and they don't have a metal chassis, in those cases you're going to want to go directly to the negative post of the battery. That will give you your best ground source on that type of asset. Your meter will never lie to you, and if you have any problems, you can trust it if you know how to use it. It will give you resistance, it'll give you voltage, which are the two basic features that you need to know if you're having an issue troubleshooting or if you're just simply searching for a power, ground, or ignition. So typically a trailer is going to have a light plug, and that light plug will have a ground because your light can't function without that ground to the light source. Like I said, a circuit is positive and negative coming together and producing a load or power. The light bulb is the power and transfers to heat, so it must have ground and power. So on a trailer, my recommendation would be go to the light, its switch, make sure it's not the brake. If you're looking at getting a ground, there will be one ground in the brake light, tail light section for the lights you can use for the system. If you're going to use a 12-volt source from that same source, you're going to need to either keep your lights on all the time, or you're going to have to run a separate 12-volt constant directly to the back of the trailer in order for that to work. It's imperative to know that the smaller the wire, the less amperage that wire can hold. What that means is that if you have something that draws a lot of current, the small wire is not going to be able to do that. So if you need a 12-volt power source that your device has and the wire is this size, you cannot attach it to a wire in the car that shows 12 volts that is this size. That is just not going to work. Stay away from small wires. Stay away from computer modules, because most of those data wires are very sensitive to voltage fluctuations and can cause damage to a vehicle. We recommend you do go to the internet and try to find your car and give yourself some vague idea of what you're looking for. If you can't locate it, go to the back of a fuse box. That's a really good place. There's some bigger size constants that control your headlights, they control your seat motors that will have 12-volt constant in them that will be able to support the load of an external device. The voltmeter do come in various sizes and various types. Some are more complex than others. A very basic voltmeter is going to work just fine for you. What I would not recommend is using a grounded test light. Test lights can damage circuits because they're a direct circuit to ground. These are protected with a integrated circuit board, so you won't ever ground the circuit you're testing, whereas a test light will ground the circuit you're testing and can potentially cause great damage. So no, the meters, as long as it's a DMM, you're fine.